Hello and welcome to this HelloID webinar. So it is a little bit different than normally this format. We're going to talk about the November release 2020. We have a different format because now we're doing it live. So I'm live sitting here in the room talking to you guys, and also we have the chat available. So if you have questions between the explanation of the features or have questions about the release, you can just ask it in the chat and I will try to respond immediately or as soon as possible. Also, it's a bit more informal. So we have, of course, the release videos that are more the formal product release, and this is more an informal session where we can discuss things if we want to by using the chat. Also, I think it's a little bit important to check if you're using the live version or you're a bit behind. So in YouTube, you should see that you're currently live checking out the version of this video, because else it could have a delay in the chat. I think, of course, there's also a little bit of delay, so it could be that I'm responding a little late on the questions in the chat. So that's really important. So for the features in November 2020, we already subscribed them inside the chat. So there are only a few in provisioning, but I will come back to that soon. So the first one we have is the person before and after object of an update event. So that means that we have the differences of the imported version between the previous and the new version of a person object or the vault of a particular person. We have the differences inside a object which you can use inside the PowerShell target connector. I will show that later. I think that's the more technical one and a little bit more difficult to explain and understand. Really nice feature is the contains. So we support contains inside the business rules, and you can do a couple of neat stuff with that. And also that applies that we have more support for some situations, and I think it makes it easier to manage your business rules. So that's really nice. Also, we have added support for the manager notification. Of course, you could already do it, but then the email address should be in your source system. But now we can read the value of a mail or user principal name property of an Active Directory account and use that to send out a notification to the manager. And at last, we have the ability to change the icon at the source connector or source PowerShell connector. On the cloud and on-premise, of course, so it's easier to see those systems. So I would like to ask in the chat if you can respond if what feature you think is the best feature of this release of the provisioning ones, so I can go more into depth into that feature. And of course I will show all the features, but we can have a little bit more explanation about that feature. So another thing I want to talk about is the release. So currently you still see in your HelloID portal, and also when you download the agent, the 2020.10 version. This is because we didn't release the customer portal of HelloID. So it's a little bit technical, but we only released the provisioning. And that's because in this new version we have the redesign of the end user portal, but we noticed that we want to do some more communication about that, so we delayed that release to the 4th of January. So that means we're still trying to update that number, but it has some technical reasons why that's difficult. But do mind, we still have the provision released, so the provisioning is released. So I got one response on the features, so it's for the contains in the business rules. Currently that's the only one, I think. Okay, let's start with that one. If nobody has other suggestions. So for the contains of the business rules, we can log into HelloID. And here we can go, of course, to the provisioning side of the software. And I hope you are familiar with this, but this is, of course, the provisioning dashboard. We can go to the business rules. I see another comment of the before and after object change. I will do that after this one. So what we currently have is if you create a new rule and I go to the conditions of a rule, we can say here in the departments, sorry, not in the departments, excuse me, in the contract attribute as example, I have the option of the equals and the contains. And we also added some information about that because there's a difference between the equals and contains. The equals is always case sensitive and the contains is case insensitive. So if you want to have the equals as well, also case insensitive, please react to the roadmap.helloid.com and give the feedback. And then we can maybe build it in, but I think we need to make it an option if it's backwards compatible. But what we can do with this is, let's say we can go to department. And what I can do is select contains, of course, and just say ICT. And instead of it's only equals the department ICT, it uses every department within the display name ICT. And I can show you that by using the department. So here we have the direct department filter, but here it's always the equals because you can only select departments. So I have to check the contract attribute to use that to filter on the contains. So if I type in here ICT, I have the same result. So here you can see that actually the ICT contains in 4 departments. So instead of only one department ICT, I'm getting 4 departments, which are different. And I get every person in those 4 departments. So this is really nice if you were using a cluster or something like that and you're using the department code of a title code on a higher level. So if you build out the code with a gradually system, it's easy to use this as a cluster kind of department side. So that's really neat. Also, I have to say that the contains is only available in the options in the contract attributes and in the person attributes. And this is because in the titles and departments, you can only select the department. And there we show the list of all departments and titles that we have in our database. But because department is also an attribute, you can use the department inside the attribute and use contains with it. But I can do this for all person and contract attributes. And that's also, I want to show you another way how you can use that. And I think that's really neat. Is I've done something in the system. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's a bit of trend going on where your source system, mostly of course the HR systems, are defining roles inside the HR systems where they can assign permissions on inside the HR system. But sometimes because the business knowledge is in there, it's good to use those roles to give out other permissions. And with the systems we can also do that. So as example, I have a source system here. Contains is also across multiple sources. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So if you want to split it, you have to create a different condition on the person. So hopefully that's the answer for your question, Cheered. Another one is the HR system, and what I did here is I created a new attribute called roles. And if I go to a person like Richard, you can see I'm importing the roles from the HR system. So I created a custom attribute roles, and it's just a string value, comma separated. So it's the rules are plain text just. So what I can do here is go to the business rules, create a new business rule, and here I can say, okay, change the condition and go to the person attributes, because it's a person attribute, it's not on the contract. I'm going to select contains, I'm going to select the roles, and here I can say, or I can say manager. And this means that if the message manager is inside the string, it will assign this rule and all the permissions, of course, that I will assign to it, to, in this case, Adam Richard, because he's the only one with the manager role. Only thing you have to keep in mind, and that's the reason why I did it comma separated, is to make it unique you have to use a comma, because the other one I added was the product space manager, and also if you do a contains on manager, it will also find project manager as the manager role. So if you want to make it unique, use a comma separated list or another character, of course. But this is really strong use. In the past, what we had to do is create custom attributes for each role that in HR was available, and then create a multitude of business roles for this. We got a question from Grady. Yes, the input value for this feature is case sensitive for the contains, and the equals is case sensitive, as you can find here in the information box. So that's really important to know the difference between those two. Are there any other questions about this feature? No? Okay, we still can go back, of course, to the other one. But let's go to the second feature, and there was a request to talk about the person before and after object on an update event. So that's a bit more technical, so hopefully I can explain it correctly, and you will see how it works. But what it does is, if you go to a target system, and you go to a PowerShell system. In this case, we have a document management system which is built in PowerShell, or the PowerShell connector, I have to say. We can go to the account update and configure. And as you can see here, we currently now have two different variables available inside the PowerShell script that gives us information. And I'm just writing out this information currently. So if I'm doing Adam Richard, you can see the data is filled with some difficult JSON text. So there are two objects. So previous person means that it's the previous state of the person before the new data has run for this particular person's and account for this system. So what we do is we save the state with the account that person is created on, or the last time updated, and we know the difference between that version of the person and the newest version of the person. So in this case, it's the previous person, and here you see in this table the differences, and I'm going to go into a little bit deeper there to understand. So the person differences, that also comes in a JSON object, and I have one here, so in a better view to understand it. So what happens here is you have all the attributes of the person that are updated. So in this case, you see, okay, change on the display name is updated, and the new version is Jimmy Doe, and the old version is John Doe. And of course, in the external ID, the new version is null, and the old version was a number. And also it's for the username, but it's the other way around, so it goes from nothing to a value. Also, you can see if a custom field is removed or a new one is added. And we also have some data for the contracts, but it's a bit difficult, but you can see if a contract is removed, it's added, and also the information inside the contract is removed and added. And you can even see the indexes change of a contract, but that's really technical stuff. Why do we need this? If you go into or building a PowerShell connector and connecting a system to the PowerShell, or with our PowerShell connector, you want to update only the attributes that are changed on the person, on the account. So now we have that information, so you can use that information to only update that one. So I think it's a really neat improvement, but it's a little bit more on the technical side, but really handy. Are there any questions about that? No, I don't think so. Okay, so then we're going to the next feature. So let's talk about support for manager notification. So as I mentioned earlier, we already had a way to notify the manager, but the email address of the manager should be in the source system. So now we support a system where we don't need that, with some other nice features in the notification part. So if I go to a notification and I go to email manager, I've changed some little bits. So here you can see that we added two information tabs. And the first one is the account data from other systems, because you can configure connectors to use a different system, like a top desk using an AD system, and it can use then information from that AD system to create the account. But also you can use that information inside the notification. So if you have configured that, you will see the system here. So in this case, for this system, I didn't configure it. I will show that later how that works. But also we have these information boxes where you can see how you can access the data. It's the same for the manager account data, but it's one step further. So here we can add a system or multiple systems where we can say, okay, I want to have the information from Azure AD, and then it will pick up the information of the primary manager of that system. So in our case, you only want Active Directory, already configured it, and this is the key how it's available. And if we go to the information, we will see the reference .manager and then .reference keyword, and the on-premise ID is the reference keyword. So in this case, I can configure the two with the reference .manager .on-premise ID account, because that's the key, and this is the field that I saved for that system. So if I go to a person, let's go again to Adam Richard, and I go to accounts, you'll see here the on-premise AD system, I have the user principal name stored. So it's really important that the values are stored here, because else it won't work. And you can store it there by changing the AD connector and say, okay, I want to store this field on creation or on update. Also, it's good to mention that, of course, the manager account should be available before the employee account, but I think it's always the case. So if we go back to the notification, we see here, okay, so the reference manager, on-premise user principal, and then we have something like 2 pipes. And that's also completely new. This means that I can do multiple stages of attribute resolving, or even a simple string. So in this case, if this one is empty, so if there isn't an AD account or the user principal name is empty, it will go to the person primary manager email of the source system. So it's like a fallback. And if that's empty, then you can use the service desk at enjoy.org. You can use that everywhere in the email template, also in the message. So we fully understand or fully support the pipeline, so you have a fallback value, which can be multiple variables or also a hard-coded string, in this case the service desk. So this is really powerful because in a case your data isn't complete but you still want to have the password, it will be sent to the service desk and maybe they can forward it. So it's not a problem and you won't lose any emails. Also, it's good to mention that the variables in the email are case insensitive from this version on. So they were case sensitive, but now they're case insensitive. This doesn't matter if you're using capital cases or things like that. Let me try to increase the size a little bit. Is this better for everybody to read? Let's do 130, I think. The last feature is on the source system, and you already see it. It's fully supported nice icons, just like the target system. So it's go to the configure and just put in the icon here, and it's easier. You just see the icon ahead currently, and it works nice. The only thing is you need an HTTPS, so it should be a secure URL. If you put in HTTP, it will give an error. Are there any other questions about these features? I don't see any remarks. Oh, another mention, which maybe is also good, not to scare off anybody, is that we have added the message here. So enter email domain is custom and should be verifiable word and be used to send emails. So currently we only support HelloID.com as a from email address, but we can add custom email domains, but then you have to verify it. We have to verify it with your help, and you can create a ticket for that on the support side, and then we will add that. But when it's added, the message isn't going away. So it's just a warning message. So if you use a custom domain, please know that it should be verified by us. And if we say, or support says, okay, it's verified, then it's okay. So I think that's good to mention. Another thing which is good is to mention is to always update the agent. The agent of the provisioning isn't backwards compatible with this current version. And we're also releasing, I think in January, a version of the agent where you cannot disable the auto update on the agent. So it will be updated automatically. And in the near future, we are going to do that directly after the release. So then there's never a change between the agent and the cloud system of HelloID. So it will always work perfectly. Last time, any questions? Okay. Then I would like to say a couple of things, or maybe I can go to this view, check if there are new questions. A couple of other things is the release. I already told you that a new redesign is coming. If you have any questions about the redesign or you want some pictures or documentation on it, please contact the office that is doing your implementation. That could be a partner implementation or directly Tools Forever. And we will provide you with information and documentation on that. And maybe we have other resources that can help you checking out the new redesign so you can inform your end users with that information, because I think it's really important to know. Another thing is, do you like this video? Please like it below here. And of course, subscribe and hit the notification bell. It's also, I think, down there, something like that. Where we then you will get notified of the webinar, so you don't have to subscribe again. So it's easier. Question: can you provide a preview for the new GUI? Yeah, I can do that. I think I can do that. Oh, sneak preview, I cannot. No, sorry, I cannot do that currently because I don't have access to it. So I know in the Netherlands, for the Dutch customers, there is going to be a live webinar next week. It's on Teams. So if you want to check that, please contact support for it. For the other offices, I know they're also doing some communication and emailing on it. If you need more information on it, please contact them. We will talk about them and maybe set up a different kind of webinar or something like that in English, or if you have any concerns about that. Also, it's also good to mention a roadmap, of course, every time. So please give us your feedback. We really like it to use that system and to know what the customer needs. Maybe we're not always as quick to answer on all your needs because sometimes there are a lot. And we also have to focus, of course, on getting the features done. I think that's really important. And on time, of course. But we are really checking every feature and every feedback that's available. And we're trying our best to give comments on that as well. If you have any other comments or questions, you can put it in the comments of YouTube below this video, and I or the domain experts will answer those questions. And of course, it's also possible to put in your questions in the feedback on roadmap.helloid.com. Every feature that I presented is also documented in docs.helloid.com. And all the links are also, of course, available in the HelloID portal. So I think that's it. So I would like to thank you. And again, don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss a webinar. And another thing I want to mention is I think it's a good idea to give also a live webinar about the roadmap, so we can explain some choices we do and be as transparent as possible. So please leave a suggestion if you like it or not in the comments or in the chat. So we will check it out and do something like a live webinar on the roadmap every 3 months or something like that. Maybe if it's really popular, we're going to increase the number. And then you can ask questions about the roadmap and all that. So thank you.